Well, good evening, everyone. Hey, it's Linda Anderson here from Linda Lou Creates. Thanks for joining me. And tonight I have a technique to share with you. I'm calling it the shadow technique. Let me bring this card up a little closer. Look at the word friend, how you can see the yellow shadow behind the dark green. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do. It's super simple, but it provides a fun impact then on the card. Also, it's the same layout, the same measurements, just kind of zhuzhed up or stepped up for all three cards. I actually have a fourth card to share with you, and I'll show you that at the end. So, all right, so let me get started here. First with the sentiment. Let's get going on this shadow technique. Now, I am going to use the colors that I have are So Saffron for my yellow, and I'm using Evening Evergreen. I find with this technique to have something light and then something on the very dark side. So I also found that a stamp positioning tool, I'll be using the Stamparatus, comes in handy as well. My colors on here, my card base is Soft Succulent, and my designer series paper is the In the Wild. It's with the, let me show you, I guess it would be nice if I showed you all the different stamp sets. It comes from the Wild Cats bundle, or In the Wild bundle, and the dies here. Now, these are retiring out of the annual catalog, so keep that in mind. So is the designer series paper, so you might want to take a look at that and see that you can use this paper. It doesn't have to be used with that stamp set. That was something else I wanted to kind of show. My sentiment is coming from this stamp set, Biggest Wishes. I just like when it's something kind of bigger and solid to do this technique. So let me put this off to the side. I'm going to bring in my Stamparatus then. So here we go. Let me get things because the sentiment stamp set that I'm using, that Biggest Wishes, is a photopolymer. I have, let me get it here. I have my foam mat inside my Stamparatus. So I have some of the grid paper as well. I have applied a little bit of adhesive underneath where my white cardstock is. Now I'm going to bring the card back in. My sentiment piece is 2 3/4 by 1 7/8. So I just cut a long strip of, I like to use the thick Whisper White. Let me say that again, the thick basic white. And I just cut it 2 3/4 wide so that I can just go ahead and all I have to do now is cut it at my 1 7/8. So, all right, one of the things that I like regarding the Stamparatus, you have this plate that pulls out, and I have both stamps set up on each side of it, the hello and the friend. So that's what's kind of cool about using the Stamparatus. You can set up several, and you even have room to put in more plates to be able to stamp, you know, multiple times. So, all right, so let me just go ahead. I'm gonna, even though I have the adhesive there, these photopolymer stamps are a little on the sticky side, so I like to use my magnets as well. So, all right, So Saffron. Now, in that designer series paper from that In the Wild, the color that they used, or that's part of that paper, is Bumblebee. I tried using Bumblebee for this and technique, and I just found that yellow to be a little too, I don't know if dark is the right word, too harsh. So I went with the So Saffron, and I was so much happier with the results. So, advantage of having the Stamparatus, the stamp positioning tool, you can stamp multiple times, and you will get, you can do it multiple times because you haven't moved your paper, you haven't moved your stamp. So it's all gonna just stamp right over the same thing. Now, I'm not worried that it's stamped perfectly or not stamped perfectly because I am going to be putting now this darker ink over top. I quickly wipe down my stamp. It's already dry. Now I'm going to come in with the Evening Evergreen. Now, before I actually do anything, what I have to do is move my paper, move my cardstock ever so slightly. Now you can move it down and to the left. That's the way I do it. You can move it up and to the right. It doesn't matter, but you're going to go in two directions, up or down, left to right. So, and ever so slightly. So here is where I know where I was. I was in this corner here on this grid paper. So I'm going to move it down and to the left ever so slightly. I find I prefer it when it's not a huge move on the paper, when you have just a hint of that yellow poking out from behind the green. So I have moved my cardstock. Now I'm going to stamp again using the Evergreen ink, the Evening Evergreen. So let me get that inked up. Now, and there, I'll bring it up a little closer for you, but I am liking the way this looks. So, and again, because I haven't moved anything, I can stamp this a couple times until I get the saturation that I like. I feel like I keep missing one of them. I just want that eye to be just a little more solid. So I'll just kind of concentrate there. There, I'm much happier with that. Now, before I bring it up to show you, get it a little closer, I want to go ahead, because I have it on the other side, I want to flip, take this out of the hinge, turn the plate around, because now I have my hello here, ready to go, and that I use the Evening Evergreen as well. So let me get that inked up. Let me stamp that real quick. And, oh, by golly, that needs another stamping. Isn't that what's nice about the stamp positioning tools? You can just stamp them as many times as you want to get the saturation that you want. So now I will bring this up a little closer to show you. So you can see that yellow, that word friend, how it has a shadow behind it. And that's because I moved the paper down and to the left. All right. You'll just have a different look if you did it up and to the right or up and to the left, whichever direction you do it. Play with it. Find out which one you prefer. So, all right. So let me get that closed up. Close up my ink pad. Then we're going to get going on making these cards, all three of them, stepping them up. Now, my sentiment is the same. For all of the cards. My designer series paper is the same. I've just added a few things here and there, so you will see. So here we go. I have my card base, soft succulent, top folding, means it's 11 by 4 1/4. Inside, I just have an extra piece of the designer series paper that I put in there, and this is 4 by 5 1/4. I have a piece of the DSP. This is 1 inch by 5 1/4. I have another piece then that is 2 by 4. So, well, let's go ahead. Let's get started. Get my adhesive. I love that side too. I love all the colors of those leaves too. So all I'm gonna do, this is the simple one because there's not a lot of additional layers on this one. So I'm just going to put it straight down to the card base. Can I tell you that this one was the hardest for me to do because I personally love layers. So this one was not the easiest one for me to do. So, but I'll be honest, I like the way it turned out. I really did. I just had a hard time when I was initially doing these to make this be one of them. So, all right, like I said, it is 2 3/4 by 1 7/8. My hello friend. And I put all of my dimensionals on the back. I know it gives people pause when they see how many I actually do use. So I'm going to apply the sentiment wherever, kind of centered. The only other thing I'm going to add are some of these in color jewels. Now keep in mind, these will be retiring as well. So if you want any of these, get them before they're gone. I think I still want to get some more. So I use these a lot. I really like them. So, all right. So let me just go ahead and I'm going to put some of the yellow ones on here. And then we are going to call this card complete. All right. And there it is. Card number 1. So this is step 1, the simpler of them. Let's step it up to the next one, which, do you see the difference? There's not much. It's just this piece of DSP. Now this is the in color, the 2021 to 2023 in color. So this is the one with the soft succulent. So honestly, that is the only thing that's different on here, is that piece. So that piece is 4 by 5 1/4. Okay. And everything else is the same. I just put in some of the extra strips from this paper design that I had on my paper, on my white on the inside. So top folding, everything's the same. So my top folding soft succulent to my 4 by 5 1/4 here, I am putting that 1 inch piece, 1 inch by 5 1/4. I have to put things off to the side here to see what I'm doing. So I'm sorry that I'm moving everything around on you. I just like to do all of my building on this before actually putting it to the card, because that way, if something is not cut exactly right, I have room to trim something down if I have to. So that's why I do it this way. So here is my paper. Now, because this is 2 by 4, it's going to go straight across my piece of DSP down here. Now I can go ahead and I will adhere this to my card base, because next is only that sentiment then to put on. The sentiment, you know, using the positioning tool, the Stamparatus, you can make multiples of those sentiments. So they really do go rather quickly when you have that. Now, you don't have to use the Stamparatus or any of the stamp positioning tools out there. This technique can be done using a clear block. So don't feel like you have to if you don't have one of those tools, to get one. This can be done using your clear acrylic block, because these stamps are also clear. They're the photopolymer. So that can be done very easily using the block. So, all right, so here we go. Let's pop that down. And yes, I'm gonna bring my jewels back in, and let's use the dark green ones this time. So I'm just popping a large one up there, and then the 2 small ones down here. All right, so this is stepped up number 2 card. So, all right, you're ready for number 3 card. Let me get that one. And this one, I've just cut some cardstock to layer underneath my pattern paper. So just, again, just to bring in a little additional color variety there. So let me bring out the supplies. A lot of it is the same. The only thing that's different now is this cardstock. So I have Evening Evergreen. It is, because this is 1 inch wide, I actually went with 1 1/4 wide. It is still 5 1/4 this direction long, but it is 1/4 of an inch wider than my DSP, than my pattern paper. So let me go ahead and get that put down real quick. So whenever you do something to use up some of your pattern papers like this, if you find a layout that you like, then don't be afraid to use it over and over again. It is amazing how a different layout, or rather the same layout with different papers is what I meant to say, how different it looks. So don't be afraid to experiment with what you've got. So, all right, again, 4 by 5 1/4, that same pack of paper, that 6 by 6 in color paper. I'm just using a different pattern of that soft succulent. So, all right, let's get this put down. And there we go. And now, because this is 2 by 4, this is actually the bumblebee. And it is then 2 1/4 by 4. So that I have some of that yellow that I'm pulling out of the flowers. So let me go ahead and get this down. And then this will go across. And we'll be able to soon get this put down to the card base. So you can see how quick these go. You can pick which step of the 3. Well, actually, like I said, I am going to show you a 4th one here. Not going to actually make it, but you'll see what I'm talking about here. So, all right. Because card number 4, there is a piece of machinery that you're going to need if you're going to do this design. So bear with me. I'm going to show it to you. So, all right, let's get this down to that card base. That, again, top folding soft succulent. And then we will adhere our sentiment with that shadow stamping technique on it. So here's that. I do like that. I really do. And it was nothing that required a lot of additional work to get that effect on that sentiment. So let's put that, how about right there? Yep, let's get some, some jewels on here. Let's go with the ones that are the soft succulent color. All right. So again, I'm just keeping it the same, you know. There we go. I just want to show you how you can build on one design and just change up 1 or 2 things and make it pretty cool. So that is card number 3. So just again, building on the same measurements, the same papers, just adding some paper behind it, some cardstock behind it. Now, you're probably wondering what can be card number 4. The piece of machinery, so to speak, is a sewing machine. Now, I like to do the zigzag stitch when I apply, use my sewing machine. I just think that just adds a cool little something visual to see on that. So this is card number 4. So I've stepped it up 1 more yet and did it by adding the sewing on it. I'm going to bring in and just put this together a little bit just to point out a couple things. First of all, when I use my sewing machine, it's the same machine that I use to make clothes or to fix a torn seam, anything like that. So one sewing machine. However, I do dedicate a needle for all of my card making, for using all my paper, because I don't want to use that same needle if I'm using it with material, some heavier materials. So one needle. My other tip for this is, now I already kind of know ahead of time, like I did here on the sample, I did the zigzag stitching on the length here only. So I kind of think about what I'm doing, and I just put my adhesive in the center. I don't want adhesive where I'm going to be sewing. So let's put this down, and then what I could do is then take this to my sewing machine and zigzag. I left these sides here without adhesive. It just so I'm not gumming up my needle and my machine with that. Play around then too with your, I don't have a problem with the tension or anything like that on my machine, but the length or the width and the length of your stitch itself. This one I was playing around, I think is too close together. So then I did this piece here in the background, and I kept the length of the zag or the zigzag of the stitch. You see how there's a little bit more space in between. I made it wider as far as the stitching goes. I much prefer this one to this one, but you know, you go with what you got, right? So even with this one, even though it is so much a much bigger piece than this 1-inch piece, again, just concentrate your adhesive to the center, because your sewing machine will act as an adhesive, so to speak, and will hold those ends down for you. So just make sure that if you plan on doing any sewing, that you keep in mind where you're stitching and don't put any of your adhesive there. So those are my tips in regards to using the sewing machine. Know that it does add a little bit of bulk there. You know, so whenever you go to put, like I put dimensionals underneath my sentiment, but I try to avoid where it's going to lay over the stitching, just because of that little bit of added bulk that has added with the stitching. So those are kind of my tips when it comes to doing step number 4 with your card and doing the sewing on it. So, all right, so let me bring in the rest of the cards. Let's see, here is, so it's 4, 3, here's 2, and 1. Let me make sure I have them all in here. And the fact that they all use the same paper, it's that In the Wild, and they all use the technique for the sentiment that I'm calling the shadow technique. So it's pretty cool. If you try it, and please do, show it to me. I would love to see it. So, well, guys, hey, thank you so much for sticking around with me. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a great week coming up. So I will see you next week. Bye now.